Got it for me?
Got it.
And away you go.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody, for coming and giving up your time. We have a little less attendees in person today and at the studio audience because the Champions event, which is fine. They can catch up and do the recording. Today is probably my favorite class that I teach, actually, of all the summit classes that I created. And it's working with buyers. I've created this actually when I was still selling real estate. So go back like well over 20 years ago when I designed this, because I was helping the brokerage I used to sell at train new agents in working with buyers. Because of course, who doesn't not like to work with buyers, right? They are, especially for newer agents, as I said last week, it's the most common place we start working with, because it's a lot less complicated. I guess you would all agree with that, because when you do a listing, we got to check all of our facts and make sure that we got the measurements right, the legal description, all these kind of things. And of course, we're the ones receiving offers and trying to absorb what we're seeing for the sellers. There's a lot more stress on the sell side. So we kind of always initially go and focus on the buyer side. But let me give you a high level kind of thought about the time involved working with the buyer versus the listing. It takes roughly 75%, three times, 300% more time from start to finish with the buyer as it would with a listing. So although right now you're in the mindset, I want to focus on buyers, I'm going to work with buyers, and I encourage you to do that to get that business going, create the foundation, the database we talked about last week. Well, my goal for everybody would be to eventually transition your business into the listing side as opposed to the buying side, because of course, time is the only thing that we cannot change. Each and every one of us in the room and at home have a limitation, and that limitation is there's only 24 hours in a day. And out of the 24 hours in a day, we probably need a little bit of sleep. Would you agree? We need a little bit of time to eat, a little bit of time for ourselves, perhaps. So our 24-hour day could be, for some of us, for working, anywhere between, call it 8 hours and 12 hours. And so if you're spending 3 times the amount of time for a transaction on the buying side, you're going to hit a ceiling eventually on what your capacity is in selling. Does that all make sense?
Yeah.
So we're going to focus on buyers. I'm going to teach you some stuff today. Some dialogues. Last week I taught you the $1 million dialogue. Do you remember what the $1 million dialogue was? Alan, you're shaking your head. What is it?
If I could, would you?
If I could, would you? So let me just put that back as a reminder on the board. If I could, and you fill in the blanks. If I could, would you? That will make you a fortune in real estate if you practice it and perfect it, because this will get you booking appointments. I taught you the other part of that to solidify the appointment. What was that part?
Alternative.
The alternative choice, yeah. And what is that? How does that look?
So it's, when are you available for a consult? Is it 7 p.m. today or 3 p.m. tomorrow?
Sure. So when would be a good time to meet? Would tonight at 7 p.m. or tomorrow at 1 p.m. work, right? So you want to get that language perfected in how you want to deliver it, right? So if those are the words you choose, make sure you've got that down so that you're the actor on stage at Broadway delivering your lines like you're actually that person you're playing. Because if you force it out or you stumble on it, they're going to sense that, oh, this guy's got a dialogue on me. He's reading a script. Does anybody still get phone calls from duct cleaning services and furnace cleaning services and stuff, right? So yeah, the duct cleaning services, I always tell them I don't have any ducts, but I have some PEs. You do those? I don't know what that is because they're. So today again we're going to do buyers. My first little thing I want to do. Again, you saw me last week. We have a book. I get that, but I like to talk about other things that are more kind of germane to the buying side and to organized real estate as we're experiencing it today, February 2024. So if there's anything of topical for you today, right now, that you're struggling on, we're happy to talk about those things. I want to try and get us out of here by the 1 o'clock, 1:30 at the latest. It's all really up to you and how often you guys want to ask questions and stop me with that. But so the first question I want to ask you where do buyers come from?
Outside of.
Outside of Canada. Well, you know, you saw my list, I think. Eh? You were
No,
sitting up
no.
here. This guy was cheating when I came in the room. He was right up here. So, okay, so we'll say I'll call it immigration. Immigration. So I think Matt also sent this just momentarily ago to the home audience as well, right?
Yes.
Okay, so it says a PDF, so just pull it up. The number one big influencer right now in Canada is immigration. Would you all agree? How many people came into Canada in 2023? We'll just go like this because it's a lot of people, 1+ million.
470,000.
Where were you last year?
Yeah.
It was over 1 million new Canadians came to the country of Canada last year. Now, does Canada have enough housing to accommodate 1 million people right now?
No.
If 1 million people didn't come to Canada last year, did we have enough housing?
No.
No. Do we have a problem there?
Yes.
We have a supply issue. Everybody know the supply issue, demand, you know, economics 101. We have a massive supply issue with right now a bit of muted demand because of the interest rate environment. We all agree with that, right? But I think we're going to see some movement this year. Inflation came down to 2.9%. Inflation would come down to what's the target for the Bank of Canada, by the way? Does everybody know the target? 2%. That's the target rate for the Bank of Canada to get inflation. It's 2%. If they lowered the interest rates right now to the 3 to 4% range, you know, they could scale out most of the rest of that inflation and get their number around 2, because in that number, that 2.9, and when it was running 3 and 4, and everybody know it peaked over 8%, right? That was inflation at the peak. And the Bank of Canada, in my opinion, dropped the ball. Their mandate's to keep it at 2. They let that thing scale up way beyond what it should have before they started raising rates. Had they started early, we wouldn't be in the environment we're in. But if they scaled out dropped the interest rates, we would scale out that 2.9 and get around the 2, because the majority of the inflation that exists right now is in housing. So those people that chose those variable rate interest rate mortgages, and you know, God love you guys. I am a conservative, as conservative can be when I pick my mortgages. I'm a 5-year fixed all day long. Why? Because I want to know what my payment is at the end of the month, right? So I never, in my entire investing career and personal career, ever chose variable. And for once in my life, I made the right decision where I'm ahead of the game. So that inflation that we see is because the rates right now that people are paying on their variables are so high. Makes sense, right? Lower the rates, get those variable payments down, inflation comes down, people have more spending power in their bank at the end of the month. This is where you guys come in, right? Because we're talking with buyers right now, where the number one issue for buyers would be, do they have the financial capability and capacity to purchase real estate? Would you agree that's the number one most important thing? You do. Wow, you're all nodding. Are they saying that at home too? I thought you guys were the most important things in the buying, the real estate people. It's actually the finance to start. Then you get going, right, in your business. But the first step always with the buyer is the financial capability and capacity of the individual to purchase real estate and to carry the real estate. You have to be on top of this interest rate conversation and have in your back pocket experts that you trust, that you know, and that you like, that you can refer them to. And how many should we be referring clients to, whether it's a mortgage broker, whether it's a inspector, whether it's a lawyer? How many should you actually refer? They teach you 3 in the courses, right? I agree. Always have 3. Now you could, obviously, if you have 3, you know, here, Matt, here's 3 people, you know, there's 3 people. You might want to, you know, if you have a really good relationship, you know, there's one that excels beyond belief, you can of course say that one is my preferred, but here's 3. Always give 3, because if there's ever a problem down the road, you know, you can justify it by saying I gave 3 options out there. So immigration is one of number one. What's another big pool of where buyers are going to come from, or where they're coming from actually right now? Sellers. So typically, yeah, there's going to be a sell side. I'm thinking more from a demographics perspective, right? So I should have said that. Let me say demographics.
The aging, the both of these.
Oh, I like that. What do we call that?
Downsizers? Downsizers?
They are doing that. Yeah, they are doing that. But what's they actually, we'll go to generations. Like I'm a generation X. You're a boomer generation. Everybody heard of boomer generation, right? Boomer generation. So these are the birth dates of say 1946 to the early 1960s, mid 1960s is kind of where the boomer generation is. And so if you look at that generation is an aging population, right? So that's a characteristic, they're aging. They were a very active generation. Anybody a boomer in the room? Maybe? Right? You're probably a child of a boomer. Yeah, so they're an aging population, but they were a very active population. And one of the characteristics of them in their downsizing adventures is they still want to stay active, you know, swimming, playing tennis, or actually this thing called pickleball now. Has everybody seen pickleball? So my in-laws, they spend half the year, well, they spend the wintertime in Florida, and now they're pickleball players. You know, I'm like, this is crazy. So anyways, they have a large segment of our population, and they also have a very big bank account. They have this thing called wealth. There's going to be one of the most massive generational wealth transfers when the baby boomer generation gets out of real estate and downsizes and liquidates their things. What an amazing opportunity for us to think from a demographic point of view where we can get buyers. Okay. What's the third big?
First time buyer?
What's that?
First time buyer?
That's a segment, but it's not a demographic, right? I'm thinking high level demographic, the buckets of what people could be in the government's eyes and statisticians' eyes grouped as. Millennials, you said?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna use that, but we're gonna call it something else. It's called the echo boom. This would be like 19 to 35, we'll call it, right? These are people that were born, this generation's 1946 to say 19, I think the stat is now 1965 on the baby boom generation. So the echo boom generation, it's an echo. You know what an echo is, right? So if I went to a mountain and I shouted, you're going to hear my voice echoing through the mountain. So in the echo boom generation is actually the children and sometimes the grandchildren of the baby boom generation. And this generation is actually a huge population right now. So we call them millennials. There's other terms that they've embedded in there, but bucketed out in a much bigger sense. The interesting thing is that these two categories are essentially competing for the same type of real estate. What kind of real estate is that? Roller. Condos. They don't want to cut grass anymore. They don't want to shovel snow. And so they want a lifestyle that is set it and forget it. I walk out my door, I lock it, and I'm gone. Now, my mom and dad are not boomer generation. My mom and dad are actually the generation before the boomers. They are, I don't even know what they call that generation, but they're old people, right? Parents would love me. They're both alive, thank God. They sold their property about 10 years ago. So they're 10 years ahead of the boomer generation. And so I don't sell real estate anymore, but I do my own transactions. Of course, I help my parents. And it was interesting to watch and observe what they went through in the downsizing. And so the decluttering, the 3,000 square foot house of accumulations of 30 something years. So when me and my brothers went over to help, and I'm sharing this with you because when you work with this generation, there's a lot of emotions. This generation has emotions.
Like this when you say that. My mom went to India, like she has a hoarding problem.
Okay.
And I'm like, this is the opportunity to just throw all the crap out. Oh,
Okay.
dad's like, yeah, take it out, that's bullshit.
100%, right?
And she's like, when I'm doing it at home, oh man, she's like, I like this. Don't throw it away. It's really tough.
Yep. So my brothers and I show up, 3,000 square foot house, and we're like, oh, I think we're gonna have to get a big garbage bin, right? And we did. We got a big garbage bin because my mom had saved every trophy I had won as a hockey player, baseball player, my brother's trophies, my report cards. I was like, oh, I really did suck when I was younger. It wasn't until I was older that I got smarter, but there was an amazing emotional purging that was going on with this generation. But this generation has the wealth. So I talk about these three things in this class because I want you to focus on one, or if two is great, all three would be difficult, but focusing on one of them where you think you could deliver exceptional service to them. Now, in some of these categories, like in the boomer category, there are these designated courses like senior real estate specialist or something like that. I had one like 20 years ago called a real estate planning designation, which they don't exist anymore. And it focused in on 20 years ago what it was going to look like today, because today we're starting to see this generation come to the marketplace. And talk about the wealth. What's a famous six words you've heard or a colloquial term that you've heard about their wealth right now as it relates to the younger generation, their kids and grandkids? From a mortgage perspective.
Back on with that.
Bank, this is huge. Bank of mom, dad, grandmom, and granddad. You won't believe the amount of transactions we're seeing where there's the assistance from mom and dad or for the grandparents for the real estate purchases for the entry-level first-time buyer. Now, when we talk about first-time buyers, they represent roughly 60 to 65% of the purchasing that is done in real estate in Ontario. It's the first link. Think of, the chain, right? So you've got the big house up here. You can tell I'm not Picasso, right? I suck at drawing too. But that's the big house. That's the single family. And then you start down here is your condo, and you get these links along the way, right? Because then maybe you have a townhouse, maybe you have a semi, maybe you have small detached, medium detached. These are all links, but the biggest is in here, which is 65%, 60%, and that is your first-time buyer market. I have seen, first-time buyers go right to the big one. And I had clients like that. I think I shared with you last week. What my biggest client was Rick Nash, the hockey player, right? So when he bought his first property, it wasn't something like this. It was like, oh, it was the prestige purchase. The vast majority occur here at the first-time buyer level, which requires a lot of handholding from you and education. Make sense? Okay. Next session we're going to talk about is the greatest destroyer. I've given you the handout. It's called the greatest destroyer of sales. Everybody got that sheet? What's the greatest destroyer of sales? And I used this word last week. We talked about it. Fear. Remember we went through the fear analogies last week? False evidence appearing real. I flip it over and say, face everything and rise. So in the buyer's mind, there's a lot of fear that's in their mind. Would you agree with that? A lot of fear on the seller's side. It's an emotion. It's one of the most powerful emotions they have. So your first question is, your buyer is initially afraid of? Who do you think they're initially afraid of? Thank you. I think I can write with my finger, right?
Certainly can. Just give me a second here. Let me.
Now I've got him. I'm off screen though, right? Greatest, no.
Hit the pen button, the bottom left. Bottom left.
Bottom left.
Now right.
Greatest destroyer of sales is fear. What is the buyer initially afraid of?
Financial.
Initially afraid of.
Giving out their loans.
hold your thought on that one for later. That might be an answer for one later, but not right now. They're initially afraid of, believe it or not, you. You as the realtor. They perceive realtors, a lot of people perceive realtors as people not to trust. They do. But when they get to trust you, know you, and like you, then they own you and they brag about you. Remember I talked about the A pluses and the A's last week? You get to that status, they're not afraid of you. In fact, they're encouraging referrals to you. Okay? Second question, your buyer's afraid of making a. Oh, I like that, but it's not the right answer, but I like that one. They're afraid of making a mistake. We have the single largest purchase of most of our lives embedded in a real estate transaction. Nobody wants to screw that up. That's not like buying 100 shares of Barrick Gold and dropping 15%, but I can still get out of it. We get into the real estate market, we make a mistake. We're not a liquid asset like buying and selling stock. So they're terrified of making a mistake. Your buyer is afraid of being, it's 2 words. These are all fear. These are things, not every buyer, by the way, is going to have all of these fears, right? But they could have combinations of them. So we're just covering off from a psychological standpoint. Remember I talked about, I wrote my thesis in real estate. I read a lot of stuff. A few of you had asked me to bring in a copy. So this is actually my copy. If you ever want to have a look at it, I could actually send it through you as a PDF. I got a PDF version of it. But this did not come into my paper, but I read about this stuff for my paper. Okay, so buyers are afraid of being left behind.
How he says in debt.
Oh, in debt. That's good. Hold that thought too, because that might come up later. What was yours again?
Left behind.
Left behind. Explain that to me. It's not the answer, but I'm curious.
If they see people around them are buying.
Like FOMO.
Yeah.
FOMO, fear of missing out. That is a real thing. It's not the answer, but I like that. Fear of missing out is something that in this, I talked about McDonaldizing your business last week. McDonald's, one of the things that McDonald's does is that speedy service. If you ever seen the movie that they did about McDonald's called The Founder, Michael Keaton plays Ray Kroc, the guy that actually stole McDonald's from the McDonald brothers. Have you guys seen this movie? Yeah. A brilliant movie you need to watch called The Founder. Highly, highly recommend it. In McDonald's, they deliver service very quickly, right? And in our world, this echo generation want immediacy. So, today they're conditioned to drive up to the drive-in window and get their meal within 2 or 3 minutes. They think everything should be like that. Housing is not like that, nor should it be like that. It is a thing where you got to take a pause and explain things properly. But buyers are afraid of being lied to. Having been involved in arbitration, professional standards at a very high level, and having been involved in all the advocacy work for TRESA, phase 1, phase 2, and I start my work next month in March in phase 3 for us, our organization. This is a very real thing for people, being lied to. That's why we build out all of these regulations so that people, with our fiduciary responsibilities we give to them, that we deliver them properly. Because you only need one bad actor or 2 or 3 out of 90,000 to make headline news. And all you need to do is go onto Marketplace or YouTube Marketplace and watch some of the exposés that have been done on real estate. So they're terrified. This is what they're getting from media. They're getting stories like this from their friends. They're, third party, fourth party information stories. So you know what happens there. If I told you a story and I told you to tell the same story, by the time we got to the back of the room, it'd be a completely different story. And so these types of things happen in our business. And so there's this embedded fear and a lot of buyers are being lied to. Our next question, number 4, your buyer's afraid of, it's 2 words and somebody kind of mentioned it. Remember I said hold it, but I won't say which one said it. Your buyer's afraid of? Yeah, so incurring debt. Incurring debt. Which is called a mortgage, right? Is that what we call it? To my French friend, I'm half French. What's the root word of that?
Oh,
What is that?
Maurice, death,
What does that word mean in French?
death.
Death. That's what a mortgage is. To death. I'm serious. I'm serious. On your documents, there's a thing there on your page 3 signing. It's called a seal. Not the ones that go, but like a seal. And back in the old days, you used to pick your finger and sign in your blood because it was for death. So incurring debt is a big deal for a lot of people. Some people understand the benefit and leverage debt has in purchasing real estate. And this is where I'd encourage you to learn how to have those conversations where if I'm putting down, buying $1 million property and I'm putting down 10%. So I'm putting $100,000. I'm putting $100,000 down to leverage a purchase of $1 million. That over time will grow by 4 or 5% at least over time, right? Real estate is not a short term, it's a long term. And so explaining that to people that have this fear of incurring debt, of the power of leverage on their $100,000. Because that $1 million property, if it goes up 5% in 10 years, how much has it gone up by? Just using simple math, 50%. Right? 10 years, 5%, 5 times 10 is 50%. So what's your purchase price now? What's your value now of $1 million? 1.5. People forget though, that they invested only $100,000 to make $500,000. Just on the top line, not even talking about you paying down your debt. So what I'm encouraging you to do is understand how to have these conversations to get these fears out of their minds so they're not thinking about that. Does that make sense? Okay. Next question is, your buyer is afraid of losing.
The shirt,
Pardon me?
the shirt.
For sure. Sure. I like that. It kind of plays in what I'm going to say reputation instead. Or another word would be their like face, right? Their fear of losing their face. In my career, I can remember many times mom and dad would come out on showings, on that final showing, just to validate the purchase. And of course, back then we're buying maybe a single family detached at $250,000. Okay. Wow. Wouldn't we like to go back to buying a single family 2,500 square foot home here in Mississauga, Brampton, Georgetown for $250,000? Mom and dad, 15, 20 years ago said that was crazy. Why are you buying this house for $200,000? You're nuts. Don't do it. I bought my house for $80,000 or $60,000. Thank goodness most buyers, when I sat down with them and their parents and brought their parents into the reality check of where real estate was 15, 20 years ago, that they understood that this was a market value now of what it is. Those conversations are no different today than they were 15, 20 years ago for me. It's just that the 250 has become 1.2 million probably, or 1.3, wherever your marketplace is, right? So losing face. Nobody wants to make a bad decision. Nobody wants to go buy $1 million property for 1.2, because that's a personal hit, and that's losing reputation, losing face value, right? Next question. Your buyer is afraid of the. It's messy, eh?
It's okay, they can read it. It looks nice on the screen.
Okay. Buyer is afraid of the unknown. The unknown. Imagine if I put you in a rocket ship at Cape Canaveral right now, and we never told you about what space was all about and what's going to happen when they hit the thrusters. How would you be feeling at that point when you're sitting on probably millions of tons of fuel that could blow up and you would be not even a speck anymore? Would you be afraid of that unknown if you hadn't been taught about what's going to happen? Well, a lot is going to happen in real estate. How good are you about sharing that unknown? Again, getting their fears off the table. And as I said, not everybody's going to have all 10. But part of your due diligence with them, you're interviewing with them, is to find out which ones are the ones that resonate with them. Make sense? Next one. Your buyer's fear is based upon bad, 2 words. Bad experience is the second word. You got it. We'll say bad past experiences. So it's bad past experiences. Now, remember, these experiences don't have to be their experiences. Remember I said that? It could be the experience of somebody else telling a story, or they're reading a story, or marketplace is this, or right? Bad past experience. Somebody had a bad past experience. Help them not have that fear. Number 9, or 8, your buyer's fear is based upon stereotypes. You know what a stereotype is? For prejudice, that's another word for it. And the stereotype is about you guys, me. We're no better. We're only one notch above who? Again, remind me.
Car sales.
Oh, you said it. I didn't even have to say that. We're one notch above a used car salesman. I call BS on that. You guys, if you feel that about yourself, lose it real quick, because you're not. You are not above a used car salesman. I'm not denigrating used car salesmen. They're probably good too, right? But you're not at that level. And if you're dealing with people that treat you like that, you need to change the people you're dealing with then. Turn the page. Remember I talked about the garbage trucks? We're all garbage trucks. We all have garbage in our garbage trucks. We drive around with garbage in our garbage truck. But some people with those stereotypes like to pull up to our beautiful front lawn and dump their garbage on it and make us, enjoy their garbage. Have none of it. Have a big pipeline, a big hopper full of leads, buyers and sellers, so that you can say, sorry, my business is full right now. I'm not taking on any new clients. Write that one down. Sorry, my client list is full. I'm not taking on any new clients. Do you hear doctors saying that right now?
Yeah.
Wow. Why couldn't you say that? Do you want to work with the jerk? I know. Yeah. Past experiences. Sorry, stereotypes. It was stereotypes. Or stereotypes. Or prejudices. I hope you guys enjoy this kind of stuff that I do with you, right? As opposed to the bookwork. This is really, to me, it gets to the heart and soul and the mind of what you need to do as a realtor in the different scenarios. The next one is your buyer's fear is based on?
These scenarios.
No.
It's got 3.
Okay, we're gonna do another one. We're gonna add yours. I like yours. It was called worst case scenario. Case scenario. Okay, you're the bonus. I'm gonna actually amend my sheet that I've had for, 10, 15 years. I'm gonna add the bonus for you. So this one is third party interference. It should be 4 words actually. Third party interference. This is mom and dads. This is the media. This is all these things that are interfering with their fears. Okay. The last one, your fear is based on, I'm just going to give this one to you because this was last week's, the nasty words that we talked about. Nasty words. Remember those words? Nasty words, fear words that we talked about. Commission, change it to what word again? Right. Cost is investment. Cheap is economical. You guys are great. Remember, I had one little piece of homework for you guys to talk about last week, which was to take those words and put it into your elevator speech. I know most of you, none of you did it, right? Did anybody at home do it, just out of curiosity?
if you did put something in chat.
Well, we have a returning student from a class of mine, was it last year or 2 years ago? Last year. So Teresa has volunteered to come up here. Teresa has volunteered to come up here in front of the camera. Okay, so come underneath the camera behind it so that the camera can pick up your voice and read your elevator speech. This is using those words that we had in your 30-second elevator pitch, which if you don't know what an elevator pitch is when somebody says, hey, Mike, what do you do for a living? Rather than being stuck and caught off guard, this is using these words, you can actually create yourself a very professional, high-level response. So go ahead, Teresa.
The mic's actually there, so nice
Yeah.
big voice. Nice big voice. You can say that. They can hear you, just nice big voice. No, it's pointed at Mike.
You're off camera, so you're not there. Go ahead.
Hi, Michael. I'm thrilled to have the opportunity to talk about this huge investment. Looking forward to Sunday's visit. Just to summarize this, your initial investment is 5% roughly, right? So $60,000. This would be followed by a series of monthly affordable investments. Plus, we can discuss other economical choices. At my presentation, I will explain everything you need to know about this wonderful opportunity. And if you have any areas of concern or if you have been doing your own research, feel free to ask me any questions. It is my objective to ensure you are fully satisfied with the hopes of becoming my future client. And the final step will be for you to autograph the paperwork. See you on Sunday.
Fantastic. So it's actually tailor-made for today's class. That's a buyer, talking to a buyer. Would you agree with that was pretty good, right?
Oh, yes.
Now, I've listened to hundreds of these from realtors like Teresa that have done this, and I'm blown away. Like I was blown away again by that. I remember her doing that last year. Take the time to perfect your dialogue, your script, because this is what's going to get you through those choppy waters. This is what's going to elevate you and differentiate you from everybody else that doesn't have an answer for that simple question. What do you do for a living? I'm a real estate agent. Okay. There's 96,000 of us in Ontario. Who cares? You hear that kind of answer, oh, that's somebody that I better get close to or get to know better. Would you agree with that? So give her a round of applause. I thought that was fantastic.
Was the last one nothing works? I couldn't read it.
Sorry?
Nasty words, okay.
The nasty word or fear words. So if you go back to my class last week, we had the 15 words that we changed the words. And Teresa took and incorporated those words into that. It was like 30 seconds, right? 30, 35 seconds. If you heard somebody say that to you or versions of that, whichever you create, wouldn't you be impressed? There's where you want to elevate yourself. Like the Summit program is for realtors that want to take it to the next level, and for some that are in that next level to take it to the stratosphere, right? The stuff I teach you is for, $50,000 agents, 500,000, 7-figure realtors that I've taught in this brokerage that use this stuff still as the foundation because it works. It works. By the way, last week I talked about some of the scripts and stuff I was going to get you guys. Matt's got we gave it to you yesterday, right? Those USBs.
Yes.
And Matt's going to figure out how to get it to you guys in a compressed format. A couple of you already got it, but you're going to work on that for us today. And it's the Floyd Wickman series on conversations that I have on a USB chip, right? So he's going to get it to you. And worst case scenario, if you want to come in, I think Alan took advantage of it yesterday. You can put it right into your computer, okay? All right, so now we've done some survey stuff. We've done some overall demographics. I want to do some studies with you now that I've researched, again, doing my paper. Again, not part of your course, but I want you to understand this because this is hugely impactful for the buying side. More than the sell side, this is the buying side. The first one was a survey done, and it was at, I believe, either Stanford. It was either Stanford or Wharton, I think. I can't remember the source. And the questions were, there was 3 questions that they asked, and the database of respondents was like 20,000 people. Anybody know how statistics works? standard of deviation, you know, when you see political surveys, they really only go after about 1,000 people, because that gives them a standard deviation that they can work with, like 3.1. You get up into numbers like 10,000, 15, 20, the standard deviation or the rate where the response is going to be very valid, the validity of it is very high. So 20,000 is a very high population sample. So the first question was, how often do salespeople follow up? Now this is generic, wasn't specific to realtors, but this was generic to sales. So who are salespeople? Real estate agents are, car salesmen are, people that sell appliances are, people that sell shop cleaning services, insurance, lawyers. I'll throw out a bonus one for everybody. The best sellers out there, if you have kids, are your kids. They will sell you on whatever they want, and they are relentless because they haven't figured out the word no yet. Doesn't register. Who has kids here will validate that, especially around Christmas time, right? When they find something they want, you can believe they're getting it. No doubt about it. Okay, so 48% of all salespeople never follow up. Oh, you got it. Thank you. How'd you get that? From my old stuff? Oh, it's fantastic. Okay, so here you go. You get the answers, right? I don't know if you got any space you can write this on. They did give notes in this one, this new version of it. But 48% never, 25% make 2 contacts and stop. 13% make 3 contacts and stop, which therefore makes 85%, yeah, right here, right?
Yep.
85% to make 3 or less contacts and stop in the sales cycle. This is an omnibus study where looking at all types of salespeople. But I can tell you, my experience with realtors, this aligns perfectly with what I experience and what I observe in the room. Okay. Now, how do I?
Tap the screen twice on the left. No, erase.
Okay. Do you have the next slide?
I've got it all.
When do people sell? Yeah. Oh, fuck, you do. Okay. So this is important because this study was multifaceted. How many follow up? Now they're asking questions of the respondents. When did you buy in the sales cycle? 2% on the first contact. Very low. So, you know, the person that you're driving around with or that's following you when you're showing them properties, the very first house you show them, they buy. Has that been the experience of any of us in the room? For me, once or twice in my entire career. It's a very low statistic. Think about what the last slide said. 48% didn't even contact them, which means 52% did. So 52% of people went after 2% of the business. Then people buy, 3% of the population buys on the third contact, 3 on the second, 5 on the third, 10% on the fourth. But remember, will that work? Yeah. Remember that survey's 85% stopped right here. 85% of all salespeople stopped the contacting and following up at that stage. So they're only competing for 10% of the business. 85% of the sales population that responded, because 48% didn't, are in the business, in the game with you. 10% on the fourth, which means between the 5th and the 12th is where all of the buying, selling, referring decisions are made by people. By that point in time, you're dealing with maybe 5 to 10% of your competition. That's it. So I want to impress upon you one thing, which is what? Follow up. And I bring this study to you, and there's one more slide, I think, isn't there? Yes. Yeah, don't go there yet. I bring this up on this one because buyers are the ones you need to follow up with the most. Massively. If you're going to focus and target your business initially or long-term in the buyer's world, I'm telling you, you got to be a perfectionist at the follow-up game. Okay, yes.
The last stat was 85% of
Well, you went to the other one.
I can't go back, actually. Could you?
Oh.
Could you go back? It won't let me. It won't. One more. There you go. Okay.
First one, sorry. First one. Alex?
Excuse me.
Yeah. Okay, perfect.
How's that go?
Yeah.
There we go. So where was I now? I'll go back to, no, this one here. So follow up is your mission if you're working with buyers. Yes.
The follow-up would be any contact, like inviting them to an event, a webinar, anything.
100%. Yeah. Next slide. Did you add this into this presentation that quickly? Holy cow. Give this guy a round of applause. Last week, I talked about the referral business. Okay. This is a huge part of my business when I sold real estate. I want this to be a huge part of your business. What stops referrals? Well, the first one is people do pass away sadly. Okay. But then there's this bucket here, right? Sorry, this bucket right there. Something I'm stepping on there. I don't know what that is. That bucket there is going to happen to every one of us. It happened to me. They decided to buy for a friend because a friend got into the business, a close friend, thought real estate was going to be easy, and they bought from their friend. It happens. Or they buy from a competitor. It happens. Or they buy from the discounter, which is only 14%. I shared that with you last week, remember? Only 14% of the public purchases based upon price, which means 86% are buying on value. What's your value? What is your value proposition? You figure that part out. Doesn't have to be huge, doesn't have to be a novel, could be a paragraph, could be a couple pages. What is your value proposition? Mary Murray, for those of you in our office that know her very well, she coined this term years ago. She says, Mike, this is called your brag book. Your brag book. Brag about yourself. You know, you got your merit badge in Boy Scouts, if that's something that was really important to you. Put it in there, right? Because maybe now you're volunteering in that world. I don't know. I got all these trophies in hockey that are in a landfill somewhere because I threw them all out. But, you know, that could be a value brag. But this part here, I talked about it last week. Perceived indifference. People don't buy from you. You're not following up. You're not staying in touch. And their perceived indifference of you was all you were doing was out to make a fee. It's all you cared about. Because once you got paid, you went poof, you disappeared.
Can I share an expression I heard?
Sure.
Commission breath.
Commission breath.
It's got commission breath.
Explain that one.
You're just interested in it because I think this is happy.
Okay,
All you're interested in, going back to what you said, they're just interested in the money. They're not.
that's right. Well, if you're not staying in touch with them, if you're not following up with them, not helping them, checking in on them, you know, in May, delivering ketchup, mustard, relish containers with them, you know, do stuff like that. Yeah, commission breath. I never heard that expression before, but that's exactly what some of them are thinking about you. You were just there for the money. All that stuff you said, all that warm and fuzzy stuff you gave to them, it was all for the pursuit of getting paid. These people are your gold mine. This is for Barrick Gold being told, all right, in that spot right there, you're going to harvest and mine 1,000 ounces of gold. But if you go into this big part of the room here, you'll only get 2 ounces of gold. It's the people that are working with you that create the referral business, the repeat business. It's by staying in touch and following up with them as well. Make sense, everybody? Listen, this is, I know I'm throwing so much stuff at you. I talked about the 60,000 thoughts a day last week, right? And you're going to get 2,000 or 3,000 new ones. I'm throwing so many new ones at you. And it's your job to filter these ideas and implement what you think you can and want to grow your business, right? Some of this stuff may not seed with you for months, even years. I talk to people that are like, oh my God, Mike, you know, I was in your class 5 years ago, And I remember you saying this, but I didn't do it. Now I'm doing it. Holy cow, I can't believe it. Right? So this is up to you guys to choose how you want your business to look and operate. I'm just giving you how I used to do it, throwing in my research and my studies in university in psychology and business on top of that. Okay. My next slide.
Can I interrupt?
You sure can.
So that takes me back to the connectivity, right? In terms of how to stay in touch with people.
Yeah.
But when it comes to follow up, right, with let's say new leads that reached out to you, a conversation or two happened, but then they ghosted you or whatever happened. Now, is there let's say a more structured follow-up approach that you teach or you follow yourself or you've seen other realtors follow?
So you got to identify like what is it that's bogged down in the relationship, right? So you have to identify what is that first before you can then answer the problem. So there could be a myriad of reasons. Maybe they lost their job and they're no longer in it. They're embarrassed to tell you that, right? Maybe they've broken up with their wife or their girlfriend and now they're not buying anymore. Like, so you got to get to the root of why you've stalled essentially in the relationship. But once you identify that, then sure, you can go and engage them in all kinds of different techniques. I'm telling you, if I could, would you, works for all of these types of things. Let's say for a buyer right now, and we've got a buyer that's stalled, and we could say something, if I could show you how the new interest rate environment has changed and could help you buy something for less money than you expect, would you be interested in hearing more about that? So that's why this is, if you could, ... would you? You fill in the blank. You give them a reason and expectation to want to meet with you and get that thing from a stall to back in motion. And maybe they're not going to go to fifth gear right away, but get them from the neutral to at least first gear, meeting with you, right? Just remember the if I could, would you? It's the $1 million dialogue. It really is. Okay. So first, in your case, identify what the issue is. Why have they stalled, right? And then move forward and create a dialogue. You want to use the if I could, would you? I highly recommend it to get that relationship moving forward. Is that helpful?
It is for sure. Although in my head, it's again taking them back to the same, right? Why aren't you buying? Let me show you how you can buy or how you can do this specifically.
Yeah.
Is there a more subtle way of doing this? Well, I don't know whose approach this is, maybe Tom Ferry's, but it's like jab, hook. Give them like 2 pieces of information and then, ask something on the third occasion.
Yeah.
Like something similar to that or anything you've seen working well in the past.
What I just shared with you is how I used to navigate that, because for some reason, something has prevented them from moving forward. And I got to get, psychologists call it getting behind the thing.
Yeah.
Okay. Which means essentially I'm presenting here and I'm not engaging, I'm not connecting with you. And maybe I don't want to tell you that because then I shared with you that, that they lost their job or they're not, mom and dad's not going to loan them money. Like what's the thing, but they're not going to tell you the thing behind the thing. You got to get there. Then you could do your jab book or whatever that thing is, right? But if you can't get to the root cause of what's pushing them away from you right now, I think your hook job could be misdirected, right? Imagine going and doing like sitting down in a presentation with a guy that's getting a divorce now, and he's not sharing that with you. You're doing this very high energy pitch with this guy and thinking him and his wife are living, a utopian life, and they're not, or he's just lost his job 5 days ago.
I don't understand the question. Like, you're following up with people, you're saying, and they're not getting back to you? Is that what you're saying?
So how to follow up with people you don't know much about. So you had an initial conversation, let's say a couple of times with somebody new, a seller or a buyer.
Where did you have the conflict? On the phone, you're saying?
On the phone, on Zoom, or maybe you met them once and nothing happened after that. So either there's no communication or they ghosted you or they're not responding. So how to best follow up with those kind of things?
I find you can get, not always, but a lot of times you can get a straight answer. And I think Mike referred to it last week, like a pop by on the door, and you get them face to face. In fact, sometimes it's like via phone or email, people can avoid you face to face. I think they're less likely to avoid you, and you're more likely to get the truth. And at least you know where you stand. And I think
I don't want to spook them out of
No.
somebody I've met
It's
just
not
once
spooky.
in my life.
Yeah, no, it's not spooky. I think that's why, from the get-go, I always advocate meeting them in person. Like Zoom, I know we had to do that during COVID, but we're out of that, right? We're back to where we were before. And if I can get belly to belly with somebody, and I'm sure anybody in this room, if you can get face-to-face, belly to belly, that's what they called sales back in the day, was belly to belly sales. Your likelihood is immeasurably raised that you can have success with them. But if you're on the phone or on a Zoom, there's no relationship developing there, like zero.
Is there an over reliance on that, in your opinion, when it comes to email, Zoom, phone, as opposed to like
100%. And let me give you the worst that I rant on this when I talk about the commission stuff, or sorry, negotiating offers when I do that course. And so I'll do it now with you. My rant is this. We're giving away one of the most important things we're hired to do by the consumer, which is to negotiate. And we're giving that away by emailing offers out in cyberspace. Ridiculous. Get in front of the listing agent if you can. And if you are a listing agent, make it open that people can come and present their offers in person.
I haven't had one.
Oh,
No, I'm serious, like the properties I've listed and sold.
hurts me.
I haven't had like one
It's a
comment.
shame.
Everything's,
You know how much I learned about real estate by going on offer presentations? I learned a lot, right? I learned techniques that blew me away from the other side. And now we are emailing stuff and we're talking on the phone with another realtor. How effective is that as a realtor? Honestly, here's my advice. If you take listings, you make it open that people can come and do the presentation in person. Do it at their house if you want. Do it here in our office if you like. I advocate for both. If you do it here, you have our access to our resources, our printers and all that kind of stuff, right? You do it at their home. If you need something printed, it's gonna be a little bit harder, although you could, scanning devices on your phones and stuff. Get face-to-face with people. Let me share with you a little thing I used to always love doing when I was on the buying side and going to the house. And inevitably, you go in, you present your case for your buyer, and you tell the story about your buyer. Listen, Matt, my buyers are a young family. I noticed your house is full of pictures of your family. Their intentions to do exactly what you did, raise a family here, have kids, create memories like you did. Again, talking about emotions. I'm hooking them on an emotion. And here's who these people are. Matt and Jenny, they love your house. We've looked at 30 houses and this is the house they want to buy. I'm selling the seller on my clients. How do they ever get that if I just email an offer to them? They never get it.
I wasn't laughing at you like that. In one case last year, I property listed, the agent that was emailing me, I kid you not, lived 4 houses down. So instead of coming over, she was like emailing me, like, why don't you just come over? So,
It's amazing what you can do. And inevitably they'd say, okay, Mike, we just want to chat about the offer. Would you mind going downstairs? They lead me downstairs, and oftentimes they park you underneath one of these types of things. You know what that is? You can't see me in the screen. It's a vent. It's a ceiling vent. And I'm underneath them, and they're in the kitchen. And guess what I get to hear? In the whole conversation. We really like Mike. His clients sound like the ideal people. This is fantastic. Their offer's fantastic. We like the number, because here's the thing. When I did offers, I used the Godfather method of negotiation with my offers. Anyone want to guess what that would be? I'm not going to try and do a Marlon Brando here, but it's I'm going to give them an offer they can't refuse. Everybody know that line from the Godfather movie? Enough for you can't refuse. Right? So I'm going to give something so crazy good for the seller, but still crazy good for my buyer. It's going to be hard for them to say no to that. I get to hear the whole conversation when they park me in the basement. Dozens of times. They'd be like, well, let's try and get a little bit more. So when Mike comes up, we're going to say, well, we like everything about it, but we want another $5,000. Back then, $5,000 was a lot of money when they wanted, now you're talking, I want $20,000, $25,000. And they at the kitchen, they'll say, well, if he says no, we're going to take it. We're going to see what he says. So now I know the game plan. I go up, right? I've done nothing wrong. They put me down underneath the bloody kitchen. And you know, what do we get? We walk away with a transaction. Why? Because I went into the house. I didn't have any fear about making a mistake or screwing up. And believe you me, if any of you fear like you make mistakes or you're going to, I made a lot of them. Made a lot, and I learned from every single one of them. If you make mistakes, good for you. As long as they're not intentional, you're not doing this to defraud people, you're not unethical. Tell me somebody in this office, in this industry, this thing called real estate that hasn't made a mistake before. If that's what you're really afraid of, get rid of the fear. Go and do stuff. You'll put deals together. Trust me. You want to get to be known as the realtor that wants to engage with other realtors. You'll start to develop friendships and relationships with other realtors. That's how I got to know realtors in my community, by doing offers, right? You had a question.
So when you submit your offer in person, like face to face, do you bring your clients with you?
They don't come in the house, but sometimes they'll sit out in the
Hang out.
driveway, or I'll have them at Tim Hortons. Now, remember, in my world, when I sold, we didn't have this thing called DocuSign. You guys can like email stuff to wherever, anywhere in the world, and get it signed. I had to physically take an offer, 6 copies, by the way, when I first started, 6 copies, sign. And our seals were not the little black, little pre-printed seal. We had to buy seals from Canadian Tire, these little red sticker things, and stick them on and sign through that. Yeah. You guys have, from a technology perspective, it's really easy what you can do. It's amazing. Okay. Did I answer the question? And
Yes.
We're good. Okay.
So now, if we go in person to present the offer, we would bring a paper copy and still submit it electronically.
Bring 3 copies with you, maybe 4. 3 for sure.
Paper copies.
Yeah. So if there's a husband and wife and a realtor, you want each one of them to have a copy. You're going to want to have your copy, right? And standard procedure usually is that the realtor will ask you to present your offer, right? Some of them are like, no, I'm gonna talk to my seller. They don't even want you to talk. But the good ones, the smart ones that know how to put deals together, there's gonna be an interaction that happens there. Now there's one caveat that I forgot to mention. To do an in-person listing, presentation of your offer is all contingent on the seller and the seller's realtor. You can't demand that.
Right.
They have to agree to that. But why wouldn't you? I read so many surveys and studies about real estate. National Association of Realtors, the American version of Korea, Canadian Real Estate Association, they every year publish dozens and dozens of pounds of studies. And everyone that I've ever read about why does the consumer choose realtors? What do they value the most in realtors? In the top 3 of every survey I've ever read, negotiation is there. Sometimes it's 1, 2, or 3. That's the case. Sending an email with your offer is not negotiating at all, especially when you're on the phone with them back and forth. That's not negotiating. If you're going to buy a car, are you going to go to the dealership and sit down with the car dealer? Probably. I would think. Why don't we do it? It's mind-boggling to me how we've drifted away from one of the core things we've been hired for. And that's negotiating offers. Right, Matt? Can you figure that out for me? Because you know everything.
Unfortunately, when I bought my car in 2020, it was from a used dealership that had 0 haggling. It was, this is the price, this is what you're getting, we're not lowering it. End of
So now
discussion.
you're not being helpful here.
I'm just saying, times change, right? And
Was that during COVID?
2020, right? So
So that
yeah,
was COVID. So that could have had a bearing on that too.
it
right?
was,
They only allow you to test drive that
and they let me zip it around, yeah,
by
absolutely.
yourself
Yeah.
and then drive the end.
I realize I'm an hour into my presentation. We haven't even gone past page 1 in the real book here. So let me get going. Last survey, 15,000 people surveyed 2 years after their purchase of real estate. So this is a real estate survey. 94% of them were very satisfied with their realtor service. 36% after 2 years couldn't remember their realtor's name. Ooh, does that sting?
Yeah.
That's shocking. The largest decision you make in your life, or financial decision, most of us, me for sure, and you couldn't remember the realtor's name after 2 years. Another element, 88% would use or refer the realtor. Holy cow. Follow up, people, stay in touch. 18 to 24 times was what I used to do. Today, 30 to 36 times is the metric you're gonna wanna do to stay in touch. 30 to 36 times. We talk about this connectivity plan at the company all the time. Do you know now why? Because of this. What happens here, people, here's a term I came up with 25 years ago because I saw it right away. We are the best industry in creating what I call orphan clients. Orphan clients. They've been orphaned by the real estate population. The ones that are even still in it are still orphaned for people. The ones that leave the business, after 2 years, what do you think the statistic is of realtors leaving our business once they get in?
72%.
About 70 to 75%. That's actually in my paper. I quoted Floyd Wickman in that because he had that study. After 5 years, it's up to about 80% are gone. Some of those people did transactions. They've naturally created orphan clients. But the ones that you're looking at right now, your competition that only 52% do follow up, right? 48% do, and then that drops down. You get this number right there. They're abandoning the gold that's already been harvested. It's ready for you guys to take advantage of it. So these people you're talking to, they could be orphan people. Who knows? You got to figure out what is your in, what is it going to be, your angle to get in there to have that conversation. Everybody's going to respond differently. You got to figure out what's behind the thing behind the thing. I studied personality psychology when I did my psychology studies in university. It's an element of psychology, personality. Does everybody know what the word personality really means? The root word of it comes from a Greek word, persona, and that means mask. What does that mean? We all have masks on in our personalities, and what we present oftentimes is not who we really are. Pull away the mask, and we could be a completely different person, and most of us are. That's the thing behind the thing. You got to figure out. Make sense? Okay. What slide am I really on here, Matt? So that I don't get into trouble. Oh shoot, I got another thing. I got this all about getting your wants and needs. You got that slide? Is that the next one? Well, it says qualification is all about getting, okay. No, it's not on there. It's one of the things you sent in a PDF. I'm gonna go real quick through this one. I have it, don't worry. Okay. Otherwise, I'm gonna get in trouble. Okay. No, it's not that one. Okay. It's all about getting to what their needs are. Why I transition from what I just said, the mask, what's behind the mask, what's the thing behind the thing, right? First one, what do they have? Or what do they have now? Oh.
Double tap, double tap.
Double tap.
Tap, tap.
Right.
Right.
What do they have now? Do they own a property now? They're downsizing. They buy a condo. They're up to have a condo. They're upsizing to a detached. What do they have now? Are they renting now? Are they living in mom and dad's basement now? What are they doing now? What do they, number two, what do they enjoy about what they have now? They're living in mom and dad's basement, probably all the free food, the free housing, the free laundry. I speak from experience. I have a 22-year-old and gets all those benefits. I'm sure he enjoys that, right? Number three, what would alter? I should say what would alter about what they would have now? What would they alter about what they have now? What would they change? What would they change? Well, mom and dad saying you should wake up every morning, and I'm teasing. I have to just exaggerating, really, you know. But I'm impressing upon you that these are the things you want to get behind the thing with people. Who is the? You got it. I love it. Gold star for you. Decision maker. That's a dialogue I want you to learn. That dialogue is from another trainer called Tom Hopkins, who trained in the 70s and 80s, 90s as well. And I took Tom's boot camp course in the 90s. It was a great dialogue for him. If we are fortunate to have the home that satisfies your needs, who other than yourself would be involved in the final decision? Could be our bank of mom and dad. There could be other decision makers, the thing behind the thing, the mask behind the mask, who's behind the mask. Number 5, as a, where's my thing? As a Royal LePage signature representative, I have the ability to research and analyze your needs to find the right solution. Solution. So out of this sheet, what you got to understand you are not a problem solver, is a challenge solver. Getting behind the thing that is the thing, okay? You're a challenge solver. Make sense? I'm gonna ask them next time they print these things to give you guys note sections. Because my old system used to have all kinds of notes for you guys. Okay. I should be back on track here first. Matt,
I jump into that one.
that's last.
It's last.
Yeah.
Where are you hopping to?
The regular thing, the buyer process one, the first one of the slide. Was that helpful? Was that good for everybody to see some thoughts? Shake it up for you guys. You know, you're getting a couple thousand new thoughts a day. I gave you a bunch of them today to think about.
Your presentation or the new one?
The new one. Yeah.
This one?
Yeah. There you go. All right, so step 1, oh, go back there. Step 1 is the consultation. I'm going to share with you that they're in the room. Sadly, I don't know, do you still have the
I gave it to them.
of my actual presentation?
I gave them the whole
Oh,
stuff.
cool. Okay. This guy's great. What would I do without him?
I sent 2 this morning. One with these little individual ones we've been going through, and another one with 2 Excel sheets and 2 PDFs. That binder we scanned in full.
This is my work. This is, okay, so this was my buyer presentation when I sold real estate. Goes back to 2006 was my last year selling real estate. So it's an older version. I updated some new stuff for people just for, you know, giggles. But ultimately, this here was my, you know, it's my Bible when I sold real estate. The cool thing is with you guys, you already get something like that from Signature. There's a built-in system, and a lot of you don't even know that. You can go to our design center, and if you have a buyer lead, you're going to have a buyer consultation. You can have one of these printed for free. Just give the name of the buyer. Likewise, for a listing, the address and the name of the sellers, and we'll print out one of these programs for you. This is an abbreviated version. They're actually thicker than this. You do something like this, which is free, and you create something like this for yourself. I think you've got, you know, 1-2 punch. What was it? Jab, jab? Jab, jab. So you got a jab, jab.
If you want to open it up, they can actually.
God, I like, okay, so just some handouts on the side, brochures and stuff that you guys can create. The most important thing here, though, is this. It's called the buyer meeting agenda. When I met with my buyers, I wanted to make sure my buyers had value during the meeting and definitely when they left the meeting, they felt like they accomplished something. They didn't spend an hour with me or a half an hour or 2 hours without walking away going, wow, I understand what this is all about. And so when you do like real meetings, like if we were working for IBM or working for Bezos's Amazon and they're having meetings, do you agree to have agendas? Like, here's what we're going to cover today, Jeff says, at meetings for Amazon. We're going to do the same thing. And so if you look at that, you got the financial capability and capacity qualifications in number 1. Remember I said earlier today, as important as we are in this solution of finding a home, the first step is always the financial step. I'd love to be able to buy, me personally, I'd love to be able to buy a $5 million farm up in Caledon that has maybe the Credit River flowing through it, has stables, has ponds that I could go swimming in, and other ponds that have trout and other fish stocked in it. I'd love to have that $5 to $10 million farm. I don't have the capacity and capability with everything that I've invested in to do that, but I'd love to have that. If you're dealing with somebody that has that fantasy, you don't have a bona fide buyer. So getting them financially qualified first is important. Number two, you got to go then, jeez, man. Number two, the agency stuff. This is you learning your forms. This is Tressa now, phase 2. What's the first thing we give people that are going to be assisted or providing a service to? A RICO guy. The service, those are the 2 key words in case you ever missed it in my sessions. If you're going to provide a service or assistance to anybody in the trade of real estate, you got to send them a RICO information guide. Everybody knows that, right? Basics. Then you've got other forms in there for a buyer. What's a buyer's contract that we enter to? What do we call that? Buyer rep, right? Or BROS. That's form 200, isn't it, Matt? Or 300? 300, yeah. This here is important. Explaining the difference between Realtor.ca and the MLS system. Believe it or not, there's still people that don't know that they're different. Realtor.ca is a public-facing website that doesn't have all the information and data that we get as realtors on the back end. But some people think that that's got all the data. It doesn't. The APS, your forms and clauses, go through that. So when you go through my binder and you send everything, right? And I'll send it around to you if you want to just have a quick look at it.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
And just send it around.
Actually, I believe I lied. I sent them the seller's one. I'll get this one sent out right now.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. So I go through in my buyer presentation. Now, my buyer presentations were between an hour and 2 hours long, just so you know. I wasn't all about quantity of booking buyer agency meetings, it was about quality. So part of my qualification on the phone to book an appointment, I want to make sure I had a bona fide buyer on my hands before I did that. When I get them in, I want them to see what an agreement purchase and sale looks like. So actually in the package, there's an agreement purchase and sale. And I give them a take home as well, right? So they get a take home from me. I actually explain to them what the form looks like. They get a copy of it. And the dialogue I used to use with them was, well, this is actually the finish line. This is not the APS. It's an APS. Pretend. This is the finish line. This is what we're working towards. Right now, this is the blank one. And our job is going to be to fill in the blanks. Well, we know the buyers are going to be you, right? So filling the blanks, Mike and Teresa are buying this house. I don't know what the seller is, don't know what the address is, don't know what the legal description is. We haven't figured out our deposit yet or our closing date. Those are our fill in the blanks. And the other fill in the blanks are the clauses we're going to need to do, like financing, building inspection. So what I'm doing is I'm building credibility and I'm building trust in the very first meeting with somebody by giving them the forms they're ultimately going to sign. How many of our realtors out there in realtor land put an agreement purchase sale on the table the day they found the dream house? And that's the first time they've ever seen that document. Get away from doing that. Give it to them right away. Give it to them with the dialogue that, listen, take this home. I know it's like 3 or 4 or 5 pages. Read it. If you have any questions, reach out to me and I'll explain to you what it's all about. The mere fact that I'm giving it to them, telling them that they should call me if they have any questions, gives me credibility and is building trust. Would you agree? Versus, I've taken you out and showed you 30 or 40 homes. I bring you back here to the office because I'm going to have our staff do the offer for us. And I put that document in front of them. They're already in a very charged emotional state because now they're incurring debt, all these fears that they had. And now you just put down this big piece of paper. It's got all small fine print. And I'm signing my life away. And I've seen it for the first time. Don't do that to them. Give it to them off the bat. Does everyone make a commitment they're going to do that going forward? At the earliest practical opportunity. APSs with the conditions, financing, building, what are they there for? How are they going to protect you? You got to talk about things like good faith in the negotiation. Oh, if I don't like, the building inspection because the windows, the caulking around the window is falling apart, I get to get out of the agreement. Really? I don't know about that. Seller might go to his lawyer and say, I don't think they negotiated in good faith to buy my $1.5 million house, and they're questioning the $30 caulking fix. That's not good faith. You might have a lawsuit. Where do I have deposits here? I don't have deposits. I want to cover this very quickly with everybody. Deposits in your agreement purchase sale. When you're talking to your buyers, impress upon them that when they put their offer together, there's three options: upon acceptance, and what are the other two?
Yes. Yeah.
Herewith.
As per agreement.
So there's, we'll call it a UA upon acceptance, herewith. And the other one is as otherwise described. Those are your three options for deposit. Now listen to me very carefully. This happens in this brokerage and brokerages across Ontario every day, every week for us. If you're upon acceptance, what does that mean?
24 hours. Next business day.
Okay, so let's get 24 hours next business day. 24 hours. 24 hours. Anybody else? You guys have listened to my programs on Signature Live. It's 24 hours. There's no business day. There's no holiday, statutory or otherwise. It's 24 hours, which means if on Christmas Day, I do an offer and we get accepted with Thomas here, and it's at 4 p.m. on Christmas Day, when do I have to deliver the check to the seller if I'm on the buying side? When do I have to deliver it to you?
Before the next day, 4 p.m.
Correct. December 26th, which is also a stat holiday, Boxing Day, I have to have it in your hands by 3:59 p.m. and be signed off on it at 4. Everybody very clear on that? If you do not deliver that when you're upon acceptance, you're in breach of the agreement of purchase and sale. The seller has options to pursue you for damages, or they can say, okay, I get it this Christmas Day, bring it to me the next day. They can let you off the hook. But some don't. Some take it very seriously. Because in the agreement of purchase and sale, there's a clause in the pre-printed form. Do you have agreement purchase sale you can pull up? Blank one? It's called the time is of the essence. It'd be on the second page, Matt. Maybe third. The time is of the essence. And that clause in your pre-printed form means anything referring to time has to be of the essence. You got 24 hours, it's got to be 24 hours when it gets delivered. No if, ands, or buts. So then you say, Mike, well, how do I get around that? Well, the way you get around it is do the as otherwise described. I highly, highly recommend you start doing that. The problem is, the word one, upon acceptance is your default in your offers. I deal with this, I'm talking about it, even some of you have probably heard me talk about it before, because I talk about it every week. We have a problem every week with somebody who doesn't understand how this works. When you do upon acceptance, it's the default in your program, your web forms or whatever you're using. And if you know your buyer has a challenge getting that money within 24 hours, don't put your buyer in a breach position, because they're going to come looking at you as the professional as being the one that made that mistake. Okay?
Yes, right.
Correct. Yeah. Thank you. Keep going. Next page. Keep going. Oh, so I think it's 20. Oh. Burn that clause into your brain for your lease purchase. So time is of the essence clause. That goes for your conditions for finance, for inspection, for solicitor review, for status certificate. And I highly recommend you're very clear in what that date looks like, because you don't want to be thinking you have, till Tuesday, whatever Tuesday is on the calendar, when the listings thinks you have till Monday. There's ambiguity there. That's a problem. Would you agree? Time is get clarity on that. Okay, I know we're not off on a tangent on that, but it's important for us to understand how that works. Okay. do your agenda, cover off the topics, marry it with what we've got, but create your own brag book, as Mary would say, create your own curriculum vitae, right? That's what they talk about in school, the CV, right? So that when you're presenting yourself to these prospects, these potential future clients, you're differentiating yourself from everybody else. Make sense? Okay. Now I can zoom through the rest of that stuff, I think, Matt. Okay. Yeah. I gotta get through all this in half an hour. Is that right? Yes, sir. All right, so we covered off all that stuff. Helping, so what you're gonna see here now is the, oh, it's not clicking.
You can, now you can.
This here is something that if you're new to working with buyers and you're trying to develop your system and how to manage the inbound calls and what to ask, right? What to say, when to say, and how to say it. These forms are helpful. So you can, what you can do is take these, photocopy them if you want, or you can create them in your own PDF or a Word document or whatever you use. Just as far as keeping you on track when a call comes in, these are types of things you want to identify. Who are you talking to? You know, and that's like name, best reach, how can I reach you by? Have you bought real estate before? Simple questions. Not asking you have to ask all the questions, have them all answered, but you're going to want to create this roadmap of how you're dealing with the inbound call. Make sense? So you got this page, that page, that page, that page, that page, that page. This one here is when you're going to meet with them. This is actually the closing costs. I've seen some of our realtors create Excel files. You're a good guy creating files and stuff. I met with Thomas this week. You can take stuff like this and create your own Excel file that you can use with your clients and give it to them, right? So that they have what is the net dollars they're going to be looking at paying for this property, purchase price, expenses, you know, all these things that you scale out and scale in. Worth an effort if you know how to create those types of templates on Excel or other types of platforms. Very cool because it sets yourself apart. Most of our top teams in here, top realtors, have something like that they give. I used to have a very basic version. I don't even have a copy of it anymore. I think I've got a photocopy of it somewhere in whatever I gave to Matt, but it was very, very neat. I always wanted to separate myself from the pack of realtors. And you guys are competing with way more realtors than I ever competed with. I think my last year, there was maybe 17, 18,000 realtors in Toronto Regional Real Estate Board. Now there's 70,000 plus people, right? Just in travel. More stuff there. Okay, where am I gonna go? These are all blank
That's
pages.
the end of that one.
Okay.
The end of that one.
I want you to take me to page, it says the home buying process. There's a step-by-step thing it's called. This one? It should be like step one. This is step one, the buying process step by step. No, it's a different one. It's in the workbook one. Did they give me a different workbook? Okay. Anyway, the first one is to choose a sales representative to work with is the one I'm working with. You gotta go. Take care. To that I say, what is your value proposition? Why are they going to choose you? What is your value prop? You want to figure out what your, I guess they gave a very abbreviated words.
And page. At the consultation contract, shut properties, all those.
They don't have the rest of the program for some reason that I got. Okay, that's fine. I'll work off. I'll talk again. Okay. So it's choosing you is what's your value proposition when they choose you. Step number 2 is understanding the financing options. This is the capability capacity element. We talked about that. Number 3, time to go shopping. I'll turn my book up here. I write notes in the book just to jog my memory. So you're out shopping, you're showing properties, you have an option. You have 2 options. Do they meet you at a property or do you drive them in your car? Your choice. My business initially was they were in the car and I drove two properties with them and showed them properties. And then would bring them back to my office parking lot, they'd get their car, they would leave. As I evolved my business and, just discovered a few things. One is efficiency and effectiveness was better for me to meet the buyers there. And, if we're showing 3 or 4 properties, they would follow me. And during the, commute from property to property, I could make a phone call if I had to, an emergency, because if they're in my car, I can't make an emergency call, or I can't check things. And back then we didn't have GPS systems in our car. So we had, Hurley's maps or MapBart. And so sometimes I'd be up in the country out of my normal trading market. And I needed to have a map to figure out where the heck I was going to find this 15-acre property, as, a 50-acre hobby farm. Like I had, that looked very awkward if I had it in my car with me, right? So figure out how you're going to show properties. The day that I decided never again with people in my car, I had bought a brand new car, still smelled brand new, like 30 days, 40 days. And I was taking this couple around. I've told this story before, but I'm going to leave a few pieces out. It's because I really put my foot in the. If you want to hear the real story, come talk to me. I'll tell you. I'm not going to be recorded telling the story. Anyways, we stopped at a McDonald's because the young girl wanted that McDonald's. She was like 8 years old, 9 years old or something, and she wanted a Big Mac. And she was in my backseat, bit into the Big Mac, and the whole thing exploded in my brand new car. I was like inside seething. I'm like, I'm never doing this ever again. And so I had them follow me. So you got to decide how you want that to occur. Here's something that is modern to our world today in real estate. Know for a fact, every time you walk into a property, you're being what? Watched. You're being recorded. Write this down. The amount of surveillance in homes today is off the charts. Every week, our brokerage gets some type of complaint from something that's happened in a showing. Last week, I had one I'd never had before, ever. And you can imagine how many I deal with, right? Peeing in the backyard.
No.
Yes.
Oh my God. That's disgusting.
And it's on camera with audio. Okay, so that's not going to go well. The realtor did not. Children did. So this is now a RICO complaint. So we received it this week. Okay, I'm not naming names or anything like that because our realtor didn't do it. Our realtor didn't do anything. I'll leave it at that. There is what they would look at as past incidences where they'll deliver a judgment. And there was an incident like this that occurred in British Columbia, and the fine was, I believe, $5,000. So for peeing in a backyard, it's going to cost the realtor $5,000.
It's the client.
Even if it's a client.
Oh, wow.
There's other stories. People, I call it a $22,000 carton of milk. There was somebody that took a swig of a client's milk in British Columbia, just a drink out of a milk carton, put it back in the fridge, $22,000. Don't do that, folks. Don't go into their fridges and help yourself to snacks, okay?
Unless they ask you.
If they offer a drink of milk,
I've had that.
take them up on it.
I've literally had that.
But it's not your fridge, okay? It's not your pantry. Don't do that. Another realtor got caught on camera. You know, some of us have like little dishes with our loonies and toonies that we grabbed for whatever. They grabbed it was a loonie, $1. That's a $5,000 loonie. That's a great investment if you think about it, right? From the government, because that money goes to the government, by the way. Those fines do not go to the actual consumer. They go to the Receiver General of Ontario. So I'm telling you, Preston, when you're showing properties, just go in knowing the likelihood that you're being recorded is very high. So that means when you're talking to your buyers going out there, don't have your buyers be telling you what they're going to pay for the property, what they think about. Those conversations happen in private, not in the house, about those details, like details of negotiation. Because if they're buying that house, They're gonna go, I'm telling you, they're gonna go right back to that showing and see if they can get anything from what was occurring there, the conversations, okay? Number 4, making your offer. I always had a rule with my buyers. Write this down. Have no regrets when you wake up. Have no regrets when you wake up. What does that mean? I'm in multiple offers tonight, and there's 5 offers. And I know that this is my client's forever home, that this is the real deal. I'm not gonna tell them what they should put in. That's their decision. But I'm gonna tell them, have no regrets when you wake up tomorrow, because if you were willing to spend another $5,000 and you wake up tomorrow and find out you only needed to put another $2,000, you're gonna have regrets. Let's not have any of those. Put your very best offer forward, no regrets. Does that make sense? Okay. Number 4, still number 4, making the offer. That's what I said earlier. The Godfather close. What's the Godfather close again? They make you an offer you can't refuse. That's my best part around, okay? They make you an offer you can't refuse.
I think I found that one right.
You got it. Where's that one from?
It was just not one that I had thought you were gonna go through.
It's in the book they gave me.
I know, I gave you that book.
It's your fault then.
It's my
It's not
fault.
perfect after all. All right, so number 5, satisfy the conditions. I told you already, we showed you in the APS, time is of the essence. What clause is that in the pre-printed again? 20. Remember that clause. Burn it in your brain. Tell your clients about it, okay? By the way, I'll make one more comment on your deposit. Some buyers and realtors believe that if they don't deliver the deposit, upon acceptance is 24 hours, they deliver it at 1 minute late. And there is court cases that are, so if you ever want to geek out on court cases for real estate, go to CanLi, CAN.LI. All the court cases in Canada are on there. And you can go into real estate specific ones. There is a big case, multi-million-dollar case that the deposit was like minutes late. CanLi, CAN.LI. You can find all the court, like you can find murder trial cases in there and all kinds of crazy stuff. Right. Massive, like I think it was $15–20 million purchase that the deposit was minutes late. And then they went and sold to somebody else and got a question?
Yes, if deposit that was upon acceptance or within 24 hours and the buyer cannot make it to the bank for some reason,
Yes.
can we add amendment?
You could try that, but the seller has no obligation to sign an amendment to change it. That's why if your buyer is going to have a challenge getting it in 24 hours, you choose the option as otherwise described. And in the body of your offer in the schedule, you'll say the buyer agrees to deliver the deposit within 3 days, or you put a specific date that's 3 days from now. What's today's date? It's today the 23rd, right? So you'd say the buyer will deliver the deposit by February 28th, we'll say, right?
6 p.m. If the
So whatever you want, but if you know that there's a challenge getting the deposit in time, do not go upon acceptance. There's a lot of banks. No, not even really banks, or like these monoline kind of banks, co-ops and things. It takes time. It takes more than a day to get the money out. I think one's called Orange, maybe.
Tangerine.
Tangerine, that's right. Yeah. Like you can't get your money out of there within 24 hours. So if you know your buyer's getting the money from there, have a plan in place so that they're not violating the agreement. Yeah.
Quick question, Mike. So if we say upon acceptance in the agreement, yet add, a clause saying that will deposit will come through in 24 hours or 1 business day, excluding Saturday, Sunday, and statutory holidays, like which supersedes?
Anything you add to your agreement purchase and sale supersedes the pre-printed, but upon acceptance is not pre-printed. That's something you've added. So you created a conflict in your offer. So if you know you're going to have a challenge, do not put upon acceptance. It does not null and void the deal. That's what I was going to follow up you saying. If a buyer has in their mind that if they don't deliver a deposit, they get out of the deal, there's a whole world of hurt and pain coming their way if a seller wants to hold them to that contract. Okay, yes, Teresa.
But just to, go a little further on what the gentleman said there, that's what you could put, what he mentioned is what you could put in the
But it would
otherwise
be
mentioned.
yes, right. So
Yeah,
you
but
would
not-
choose as otherwise described and then add what you
As
said.
otherwise
But
described.
if you do upon acceptance, but that, you've got, you're gonna make lawyers happy, right? Because now you've given lawyers an opportunity to challenge your agreement.
Yeah, because I've been guilty of doing that, so
Yeah.
it was an offer coming through on a Saturday, so I knew Sunday the deposit is not gonna happen.
Right.
So, but I still did not change the upon acceptance, so yeah, that's.
There you go. So time is up on that one. So that's, did they go to the next one there for me, Matt, which is the Royal Pay Signature brand stuff, and just scroll through all of that stuff. I think bring right to the back end. So that book's covered. I covered my kind of stuff. I've got 15 minutes left with you guys. I actually did this very quickly. This course, by the way, I usually teach it 3 hours. So I've condensed it down, right? So we got 15 minutes to play with if you want. If you got questions for me, any of the content I covered.
So what happened with the case you were mentioning, the $20 million?
So the $20 million case was a case where the deposit was a few minutes delayed. It arrived, but it arrived after the deadline. And the sellers took that as a default of breached contract, which they're entitled to do. And to mitigate their losses, they put it back on the market and they sold it. And they sold it for a different number and held the original buyers liable for any and all damages. Here's something very important to understand too. With damages with these contracts for failing to deliver deposit, the deposit is surrendered as a liquid damage right away. It does not get included in the calculation of other damages. Everybody clear on that? Matt, do you have that thing I probably gave it to you? What happens when there's a failure to deliver deposit? It's a 2-pager that I created a couple years ago. If you got that, send it through to everybody. There's 4 stages, and I got this from Mark Moshe. He's a litigation real estate lawyer here in Ontario. Great. Him and a guy named Greg Whedon. If you ever run into litigation issues for real estate, I recommend those 2 names, Mark Moshe and Greg Whedon. They operate in this space and they're the best. And so in a failed deposit scenario, let's say it's $50,000 was the deposit. The seller's entitled to the $50,000 right away. They don't collect it until there's a judgment, of course, but they're entitled to the $50,000. Everyone understand that? Now, whatever damages they may experience beyond that, they can claim for that as well. So deposit is in their hands once it's all litigated, and maybe extra damages could be they sold it for less. That's an easy one for us to figure out, right? The first offer was $1 million. The market's corrected. Market's down. No buyers are out there. Now I can only sell it for $950. Sold the first one to $1 million. Now it's $950. What's my damage right there? 50. What other damages could I experience? Yes, there you go. Can you send that to everybody by email? Yeah. Thanks, Matt.
Sorry, go ahead.
On a weekly basis, I provide this to one of our realtors to provide to their clients on a weekly basis. This is how common it is right now.
What happens if the deposit does not come through for rental? Because that happens all the time.
So it's still a binding agreement that people have signed under seal for. If they want to chase the tenant that's now not delivered the 3,000, 4,000, the landlord's fully within his right to do that. We don't experience that very often. And, quite frankly, the seller's probably landlord going to want to get to somebody in there and focus on doing that, right? They find a bona fide tenant. And quite frankly, it's a good thing that they found out now what this tenant's life, right? Like to me, it's actually positive that they haven't done that, because we're not worrying about somebody with a problem down the road. Yeah.
Yeah, when we use the release regarding the COVID.
if you were to advocate, if you work for the seller and the buyer's realtor doesn't show up with the deposit and you advocate your seller signs a mutual release, you've just become part of the problem. Do not do that. If you're the buyer's agent and you're trying to get that signed, you become a hero. Right? Do not, as the seller's realtor, sign a mutual release at all under any circumstance in that, because you have just abrogated your fiduciary responsibility. Do not do
Okay,
that.
so if I'm representing a seller, what should I do? Not to do
Right.
that.
So there's a lot of old school brokers are under the mistaken impression that you need a mutual release to go back to the market. Is that why you're asking that question?
Yeah.
Right. Completely wrong. You do not need a mutual release to go back to the market. In fact, as I said, if you engage in doing that and having your seller sign that, if that was a $50,000 deposit, I think you're going to be looking into your pockets and maybe pulling out some money. The insurer might not even cover you.
So used to be like a $50,000 spend representing a seller, the buyer signed it, and the seller signed it.
Okay, so
Then that $50,000 is
So
gone.
if the mutual release is directing the 50,000 to be given to the seller, that's not been actually deposited, delivered, that's a different story. Don't yet sign that document until what? What's the first thing you're always doing in these situations? Go to the lawyer. Thank you very much. I'm sharing with you stuff behind the scenes, what happened. But let me impress upon you to make this impression loud and clear. In these situations, yes, you call me or you call one of the other brokers. We'll tell you the steps. I'll give you this document. You've now got this document. But I'm also going to tell you one very, very important thing. This is a legal matter. Seller's got to go to their lawyer. When I'm dealing with the buyer that's in this situation, this is a legal matter. You need to talk to your lawyer and get a legal opinion. I am not a lawyer. This is the mistake too many people make in our business. They put hats on. They think they're lawyers. They think they're building inspectors. They think they're mortgage brokers. They think they're stagers. They think they're everything. You're not. You're not an accountant either, so don't give accounting advice. Don't be giving people advice on, rebates that that they can get. You can tell them there's these things available. Talk to your lawyer, talk to your accountant. If you're giving engineering structural advice in a walkthrough in a house and you don't have that little ring on your finger, don't do it. You're not a hero. Because when the problem comes and it's a legal problem, you become a zero, not a hero. Yes.
A question from Don at home. He had a buyer who got their deposit check on Saturday, but the deposit amount on the check was wrong. Bank was closed on the Sunday. They weren't able to get it fixed until Monday. Luckily, he had a good rapport with the listing agent, so it wasn't a huge issue. But if he didn't, how somehow that he can protect himself and his client in that scenario?
So that would have been using the as otherwise described to push out getting the deposit as far out as you could, right? So that's the only solution you have.
But I'm assuming they had already accepted it and they had the check, they thought it was okay.
Yeah.
So what do you do if the offer you had upon acceptance and you handed them a check with the wrong amount?
Yeah.
How do you fix that problem?
Well, you work with the seller. In this case, you have a amenable seller that's going to work with you. I think both realtors are, somewhat liable here. Ours, yourself, for delivering a check that's not for the same amount, but also the receiving end, right? Like they're receiving on behalf of the seller a check. So that's probably why they were cooperating at that level, because the listing realtor himself or herself would acknowledge and understand, oops, I also kind of contributed to this, right? Because we could have triaged it right then and there by maybe adjusting our APS, right? Back when I sold, there's 3 options. Upon acceptance as otherwise described and herewith. What was the most common you think when I sold real estate back in the old days? Herewith. We actually literally had our clients, our buyers, go to the lending institution and get a check, get a bank draft, a money order.
So in that scenario, he technically could have just amended the offer, lowered the deposit to the amount on the check.
Right then.
Or
What did they discover? It was different.
when they gave it to them, on the weekend. It was,
So it was the day after the acceptance.
it was on Sunday when the bank was closed. They noticed the amount was wrong. So
I'll say this, you could have caused some excitement between two lawyers. If two lawyers wanted to get paid extra money, right? Because you've created an agreement that's not clear. There's clarity and there's a violation of the number, right? The time of essence, yes, we gave it, but we've not performed the contract because it's a different number on the check, right? So we could have given lawyers a nice field day if they wanted to, but in this case, thankfully you had reasonable people on both sides. I'm talking worst case scenario. Like worst case scenario, we could have had a problem if the other side was not as cooperative, let's say.
and if the other side had wanted to, they could have used that as an excuse to
Correct.
kill the deal.
Yeah, because, it's our responsibility, obligation in the contract to deliver ABC number by XYZ date, right? And we didn't do that. So the fault's on ours. The listing realtor accepted that check, or the office did. There's some culpability there that may have encouraged them to, mitigate this thing, right? Before it became a problem. But from a purely contractual basis, yeah, it was, the time of the essence was violated, it was because you've gone past the 24 because you didn't have the right number. So, yeah.
Luckily, Don noticed it as soon as he got it, but it was still, bank was still closed.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
And he said, thankfully, the other people were reasonable.
Awesome. Awesome. There's another question I saw with the hand up. No. On deposits, the seller has, let me just see if we can find it here.
That's the next page.
I'm just going to reiterate this part here. You're not lawyers, so stay clear of being the lawyer. You're not. Don't be a hero. These are all case laws, case studies that are on CanLive that reinforce these elements that are there. Yeah, the client is expected to fix the breach. So there's a requirement for the seller. The seller is in the breach situation from the buyer to mitigate the breach, mitigate their damages as quickly as possible, right? So that means that I don't come back on the market until 6 months later and the market's dropped by 20%. Well, that's not mitigating the damages in a timely, quick manner, right? So the court would say, well, you needed to go back to the market quickly, within a day, couple of days, a week tops, and the market dropped, maybe 3% or 5%, not 20%. So you're claiming 20, you're entitled to 5. Does that make kind of sense? So they actually do those kind of math numbers. Fortunately, like to get to this level, you're talking probably 1 in 1,000 to 1 in 2,000 situations that could become litigious that actually make it there. Like people typically mediate and arbitrate out of the actual court, because when you go to court, you're talking serious money. You're giving a retainer to your lawyer, right? And that lawyer is probably getting $400, $500, $600 an hour. You get your trial, you might be lucky and get the first trial of the day, or maybe you're at the 3 o'clock while your meter's running. These things are very expensive. But there's 2 types of courts in our country here in Ontario, well, Ontario for sure. Does anybody know what the 2 are? What's the one that probably you're most familiar with? Small claims, right? I'll just go SC, small claims. Does anybody know what the ceiling is to make a small claim is? 35,000.
Oh, that's the max.
Yeah, that's the ceiling, right? So it's 35 grand. And the other one is superior. Well, it's actually, they're both superior court. And that's 35,000 less. The difference is that small claims, you can represent yourself, or you can hire a paralegal. You go to Superior Court, you got to hire a lawyer, and the meter's running. So when I talk to people that are thinking about doing lawsuits, and they get all eager, then I give them I'm not a lawyer, but I say, listen, I've been to a lot of the trials because I go to them for the company. It's kind of like when the old Buffett thing for investing, tide raises all boats, and when the boat's low tide, you find out who's naked. Well, when it comes to suing and people find out what the cost is, and you find out all these brave people who are in body armor and soldiers and tough, they're actually naked. They're like, I don't want any part of that. And that's, that's fine. They'll go and mediate. But you get into Superior Court, $35,000 or more, you're not probably at the end of the day getting remotely what you were suing for. It gets eaten away by legal fees, okay? So when people are, let's say the claim could be 45,000. I say to our realtor, I go, listen, you probably should tell your client, talk to their lawyer. They need to have that conversation, but maybe one of the things that they should talk about is don't go to Superior Court, take the $10,000 hit, and go to small claims court for 35,000. They're gonna have a better outcome financially if they do that. Make sense? Again, work with your lawyer. No, I'm not the lawyer. Our realtor's not the lawyer. But know the big picture, right? So Matt, can you get this out to everybody just so that they, yeah. I think it's on the other page. If you can go backwards, I wanted to see. Let's see. There should be a. There it is there. There's the seller's remedies right there. A seller can elect their remedy. This can be rescission of the contract. So that the deposit hasn't come in. What does the seller's, what are their options? So they can rescind the contract, which means I am calling this breached. I'm considering this null and void. I'm going to keep my options available on what I'm going to do to pursue you, right? They can require specific performance. That's what happened in, was it Don? Yes. Yeah, that's what happened in Don's case. The specific performance was both parties work together on a solution. All right, you get me the check by Monday and all's good. Perfect. So seller has that option, right? Or pursuit of damages, which is the Superior Court or the small claims court. Again, that happens so rarely, because most of them get arbitrated or mediated way before you ever reach the court. Okay. Another question?
Yeah, that's listening to the story. Usually that people were humans. Few minutes late with the deposit check could happen, but depend on the seller or both agents. If they are corporate, they work together. Okay, no problem. Okay, we can accept this 5 minutes late, being late with the deposit check. But in this case, so that they work together. So and then at the end, you said doesn't happen very often that seller take client to a court.
Yep. So let me ask the question. In that scenario, if you're the seller side, have you advised your seller that the time of essence has been breached and that we're 5 minutes late, that these are your options? Or did you not say nothing, you just accepted the check and went forward?
I don't know.
But it's an important question, right? The seller is entitled under fiduciary responsibility, your fiduciary responsibility to be told that. Just by the way, they breached. Here's your options. So they find out later, right, for whatever reason, and they're talking to a pit bull lawyer to say, well, you could have said no to this contract because, when the seller's lawyer is doing the closing 3 months later, maybe the market's gone up by 15%. And we've seen that happen in 2 or 3 or 4 months where the market can pop 5, 10, 15%. Seller's lawyer finds that out just before closing. What's going on here? Your agent didn't tell you that? Didn't give you the option? So you got to be, as a fiduciary to your client, giving them the update, even if it's 5 minutes late, okay? Yes?
So let's say in a scenario, a seller has two offers, he accepts one, he received the deposit 10 minutes late, but still cash it, the brokerage. The contract can be void and he can accept the second offer and keep the first deposit.
So if there is a breach in the time of the essence clause, that is a breached contract. The seller can choose one of those three options, right? So if the brokerage is taking the money and putting it in our account, that doesn't mean that the seller accepted the money, right? We as a brokerage have the requirement to take the money in, right? But we are ultimately, because we did that, we're not de facto saying that the seller has agreed now to the specific performance was just bring the check and we're going to be okay. We don't have that authority. We're not a party to the agreement. We're just a mediator, right? We're facilitating housing the deposit in trust for both seller and buyer. So what the seller wants to do at that case, again, we're gonna direct them, if you look in the last page, to talk to their lawyer. Right here. We're not gonna tell them, yeah, you can treat this as a breach and go ahead and do this. No. Go talk to your lawyer, have your lawyer instruct you, and give us written direction as well. How do we want to proceed?
Like, but that is only in the case of what you're advising us to do as a normal practice is, if we ever receive a check late, right, the deposit, if we receive it late,
Yeah.
it is in our fiduciary duty to inform our seller
Correct.
the check is late. These are your options, but you need to speak to a lawyer to let me know in writing what I should do.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, exactly. I'm not trying to complicate it and make it all like
but
all
I'm saying,
this.
so instead of complicating it.
Yeah.
I'm just asking, even though I know the answer.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it just be better to say that it is 5 minutes late? What do you want to do?
Is that your decision to do that?
Okay, I thought so.
That's my
but
question
I'm
to you.
just-
Just to be on the safe side, I would advise buyer that look, instead of 24 hours or a day deposit, why don't you have, let's say, 25, 30 hours from acceptance of the offer?
Exactly.
This way, if you knew that might be a little bit problem, to be on the safe
Yeah.
side.
That's why
Advice mentioned.
I said that a couple of times, right? Use the as otherwise described option. You're using upon acceptance because that's the default. You're not changing that field. Just change the field.
You don't think at that time when we are making that offer.
I'm telling you, we're,
So easy.
because the market is in like this for the last, couple of years, if you really look at it, right? But certainly the last year, the market's been in a real funk, right? And so I see this happening on a weekly basis multiple times. I bring it up because of that. If you're going to be working with buyers, you should show your buyer that piece of paper. If you're on the seller side, you should show them that piece of paper before it becomes a problem. Maybe you add that to your buyer presentation package. Maybe you add that to your listing package. Do you have a question? We're on time?
We're out of time.
We're out of time. All right. See, I snuck it in, the extra 15 minutes there. All right.
This is bonus time, Mike.
For me, it's usually like 3 hours. You know that. I don't know.
I think so.
But you can tell everybody that I kept it on time. All right. Thank you.